Hey, beloveds. So, a while back, I had the honor and privilege of being one of the speakers at the University of Pretoria's Mind Altering Books webinar. This is a compilation of my contribution and some of the questions that I had the privilege of answering. I have omitted the other speakers' contributions out of respect for their intellectual property. Enjoy!
Their career spans lecturing, events, and production, management, research, content development, and creative direction, spaces where communication and collaboration are central. As both a strategic communicator and an engaged conversationalist, Matete fosters dialogue that connects ideas, people, and cultures. Led by curiosity and purpose, Matete's storytelling seeks not only to inform and inspire, but to spark thought provoking conversations that imagine and build tomorrow's solutions today. I'm very happy to introduce Matete.
Thank you, Miss Adrian. That was a very lovely introduction. First thing first, I'm very stoked to be here. This is such a very lovely initiative. I was sharing with Miss Adrian that it is so lovely that now we have the book nook and we've got the book club and we can have these kind of conversations, and it's such a privilege and an honor for me to be here with you today. So as I've been introduced, my name is Matete, and today I'm going to be sharing on one of the most influential and transformative books that I have ever encountered in my life, and that is What Happened to You: Conversations on Trauma, Healing, and Resilience. And that book is by Dr. Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. Just a bit of background as have been introduced. I come from a drama background, right? So I'm a trained performer, and essentially, drama is the study of human behavior. And it was in my second year when I met an exceptional professor who was able to blend drama with neuroscience, and that for me was so exceptional because I have always been interested in my brain, in how the brain works, particularly how my brain works, and why I do the things that I do in the way that I do them. So having come across neurology was one of the ways that I'll be able to understand how my brain functions, and having had that experience at drama at a foundational training was very important. And when I came across the book What Happened to You, I was very intentional on using it as a workbook for myself. Although the book does not have journal prompts or a space to journal, but I was very intentional on using it as a workbook to also understand for myself what happened to me. And today I just want to share on three important things that I could extract for the purpose of this conversation that I can share with you. And one of the things that came through that I really appreciated from the book was the brain structure. So Dr. Perry gives this analogy, not even analogy, he shares this information of the human brain being structured as an upside down triangle. And that upside down triangle has four interconnected bases, that being the brainstem, the cephalon, the limbic, and the cortex. So what happens is in the brainstem, that's where all of the physiological sensations happen. So anything that you're feeling, your smell, your what you are seeing, what you're hearing, all of them take
Recording in
place.
progress.
Thanks. All of those things take place in the brainstem, right? And then there, the next phase of the brain is the cephalon, which is where your natural movements happen, arousal, hunger, all of those things. And then the next one, which is the most interesting one, is your interpretation space. That's where your emotion in your limbic spine or in your limbic brain, that's where memory is, that's where your emotions are being interpreted. And the last phase is the cortex, the or your prefrontal cortex, as some have said it, which is where your cognition is. This is where your language, this is where you get to interpret stuff, right? So what happened, or what I enjoyed from that analogy, was understanding that all our human experiences are processed from the bottom up, from the brainstem all the way to the cortex, meaning that we get to so all of those don't start at the smart point. We actually start at the lowest part of our brain. And so the sequencing process means that the most primitive reactive part of our brain is the best part to interpret and act on the information coming from our senses. So our brain is organized to act and feel before we can actually think. So we react from our evolved fear based part. And so by the time interpretation comes, we are most oftentimes inaccurately interpreting our emotions. I read somewhere that the physiological experience, especially our feelings, last for 3 seconds in the body. So the feeling happens 1, 2, 3, and it's done. And what human beings do then is wallow in the emotion, where we are still interpreting and trying to understand what is that sensation. That's where emotion is developed, and we wallow there. That's why you have, oh, I'm feeling sadness for like 3 hours. Where else that sadness happened 3 seconds, like 2 hours, I don't know how many seconds ago, right? And so now when I started to understand that this is the processing that happens in my body, it was very informative, especially because I had also read the 5 a.m. club where Robin Sharma speaks about the amygdala. The amygdala is the ancient brain that is literally at the bottom of the cerebral. So the amygdala was very important in the ancient times when we were still in the caves, and it was that fear, I call it the fear factory. It was that space where our ancestors at the time would use it to detect looming danger and threat. But now, in this overstimulated times that we live in, where we are so exposed to cortisol and stress more than our human brain can take, the amygdala then becomes a fear factory. It literally becomes your negative bias. Every new experience, it becomes a threat. A friend of mine was saying that the whole concept of procrastination is not just about being lazy. It is actually your brain trying to protect you. That is the amygdala trying to protect you, because it is perceiving the exercise or the activity or whatever it is that you're doing, and the stress that the body responds with as a threat. So the amygdala is like, ooh, I need to protect you. The downside about that is the amygdala's strategies are not sustainable. So it'll distract you with maybe scrolling on the phone, or maybe doing another activity. For me, it'll be cleaning. And then now the activity still is there. So now it becomes this perpetual time of the stress and the activity not being done, which then leads into procrastination. So now having that information and having that vocabulary, that for me was very transformative, because then now I have the core. I know what exactly is happening in my body. I can articulate it. I know if I'm feeling this emotion, this is a sensation. So I can just give it 3 seconds, and then maybe another 10 seconds, and maybe another minute for my brain to then process it properly. And that for me was very informative, because then it led to the other part of the book that I really loved, which is the patterns of stress activation. So in our caregiving times, when we're being cared for by our parents and whatever, there are three phases that happen that are very important to how our body then processes stress and trauma and all of those things. And that is the unpredictable, the extreme, and the prolonged, which that is the not so good side of stress, which leads to sensation and what Dr. Perry called dysfunction, right? Whereas on the other side, you have consistent, predictable, and nurturing patterns, which those are very good, because they're leading to presence, to reciprocity, to attention, and being attuned. So if you were raised by caregivers that were present, that were consistent in being present, when you cried, then they attended to you, then that told your body that this person is predictable, because this action is led by this reaction, and they are consistent in that, and that was nurturing. So for me, that information was very important, because it helped me to articulate and define for myself what love is, what love feels like in my body, what safety feels like, and therefore I can be able to understand when my body is in flight, freeze, or flight mode, which is very important to understand in my body as I'm going through experiences. And the last thing that I want to touch on, which is very great, because I don't want this to sound like, oh my God, there's such a lecture and it's all doom and gloom. But the beautiful thing is our brains are adaptable. There's this concept now that is going around of neuroplasticity. All that means is that your brain is adaptable. I mentioned how the amygdala will be out here trying to protect you in a form of procrastination. That is your brain adapting to the stresses that is there. So that means that whatever conditionings that you had previously in your upbringing, as you were going through life, whatever experiences that you had, those conditionings, then the brain creates some form of reactions or protective coping mechanism. But you can change out of that. You can create new neurological patterns. You can create new neurological paths that are then able to tell your brain to be and react in the way that you would like to be. This for me was the good news, because this then meant I don't have to be stuck to my experiences. I don't have to be stuck to this person that I was conditioned to be, that I get to choose who I want to be. And I can then be intentional and purposeful about the activities, about the conditionings, about the habits that I then inhabit that will then lead to me being this person that I aspire to be. And this book was so good for me because it not only gave me language, it gave me vocabulary, it gave me an understanding and a scope and a structure of how my brain works, how my body processes, and how I can change from one activity, from one version of myself into another version of me. And for me, as a person that is so interested in growing, in evolving, in being my highest, most best self, this was the good news. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I see we have a question. Yes. Quena, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Thank you. I just tried to raise my hand there, but I was struggling because of the waiting. I can't see the hand on the side. So my question is for, I wrote the name of the colleagues here. I think for my baby, the one who read What Happened to You.
Yes.
My question had to do with, in your own words, after reflecting on the book, how would you somehow describe or explain healing? If I'm saying, for example, an individual, I'm going through a healing process, based on what you've read in this book, how would you describe healing? Because I noticed in the book, because I read the book before, it speaks more of healing takes place in a community, so to say. So I'm trying to understand in your own perspective, how would you describe healing for someone who's saying, I'm going through a process of healing? Perhaps how you describe it can even help someone else in this.
Wow. Thank you, Gwena. That is a very interesting question. Um, this is how I'm going to start. So, as human beings, we are designed for community. Human beings are social beings. Human beings are designed for bonding and being amongst community. And when we speak about community, we're not just talking in the literal sense of people around you. We live in very interesting times, so community for us today varies. It could be a book club, it could be people that you interact with on the social, it could be mentors that are mentoring you virtually and stuff like that. It could be your immediate family, your friends, it could be whatever network that you have. For me, healing is being intentional and purposeful about the person that I want to be, and then taking intentional, purposeful action. So I mentioned earlier about creating new neurological paths or new neurological patterns. And what that looks like for me is understanding that, okay, this is what happened to me. This is the kind of upbringing that I had, and these are the patterns that it had conditioned inside of me. Now, who do I want to be? So then I envision this person that I want to be. And then my next question after that is, what does that person do? What do they look like? What do they like doing? So then I start becoming intentional and purposeful about inhabiting the kind of habits. I like that they mentioned atomic habits, because Mr. Clear there also states very practical ways as to how you can inhabit new habits by habit stacking and putting them in such a way that is doable for you. So if you're brushing your teeth, maybe you can listen to a podcast that can give you ideas as to how you can do that. Or you can take a walk, and then while you're taking a walk, read a book, which may be impractical, but it's possible with Audible. All right, Audible is there. Or when you come back from work, as you are cooking, then you're doing some exercises because you're wanting to be better in your health. Do you see how this thing works? So you can habit stack. But for me, healing is being intentional and purposeful. And that means I have a clear vision as to who I want to be, how that person wants to show up in the world, and I show up as that person. I could do it nervous, I could do it scared, but I will be doing it. Miss Sharon Rose.
Thank you so much. So Chloe has raised his hand. Flo, would you like to pose a question?
Uh, yes. Thank you, Andrea. And am I audible?
Yes. Yes, you are. Ladies, please just come and stand here so that he can at least see you. All right. Double?
I can see that. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Adrian and the team for organizing such an insightful session. And thank you to the presenters too. Um, my question is one, and it's related to reading in general, because some us are struggling to even finish an introduction chapter. And yeah, and we have a lot of books in our cabins. Yeah, how do you do it, guys? Especially in the midst of your social media distraction, especially TikTok, and then you again with your studies. How do you manage to how can you give someone an advice who hasn't started reading, or someone like me who's unable to even get through a few chapters of a book? Like, yeah, how do you do it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glow. That's a very common question, actually. And I'm going to take it back to what Miss Lindy was said at the beginning. And this is because it's a passion project of mine. I am privileged enough that I started reading at a very young age. So reading for me is easy. And that's why I've got a book drive where I do read. We read to the young children. So we start introducing that culture of reading to the younger minds so that they grow up with it, because I'm living proof that it's actually the best thing that you can do for yourself. On a practical level as well, what I can do, what I can refer to is, again, atomic habits, what Mr. Clear said. You want to make sure that if you want to introduce reading into your life, you don't make it another to-do list, because the moment it becomes stressful, remember, the brain is going to then come up with ways not to do it. So you want to incorporate it in your life as is, so that it becomes part of your daily routine. So if maybe in the morning when you wake up you would check your phone, instead of checking your phone, pick up a book and read it, right? And the other challenge that we normally do to other grown-ups is start reading with a page a day. A page a day will literally take you less than a minute, if not 5 minutes, depending on the density of the book. So you can start with a page a day. So when you wake up, see, I'm already habit stacking for you. Look at me, helping you. So in the morning, you can say, as you wake up, take your book and you just read a page. So now you've read a page. So now over a week, that habit is going to accumulate. And then next week, you might find yourself, oh, I'm reading 2 pages. And then you start reading 3 pages. The next thing you know, you spend 20 minutes reading about a chapter of a book. So that's how you do it. You do it incrementally and by introducing it and incorporating it into your already existing life, so that it is not yet another to do on your list. I hope that helps.